That afternoon, the rain came out of nowhere. I stood in the hotel lobby staring at my phone screen. Ju Yutong had sent a room number 1808, followed by a voice message. Xiaoman, I'm really running late. Go on in and sit tight. Cover for me for a few minutes. I'll be right there. Her voice was breathless. The background noise chaotic, like she was standing on a busy street. I could even hear a car horn blaring. I'd known Ju Yutong for 8 years. We started as college roommates, then moved in together after graduation. She'd helped me out more times than I could count. Last year, when I had emergency surgery for appendicitis, she stayed by my hospital bed for 3 straight days and nights, so when she said something had come up and begged me to take her place at a blind date, I didn't hesitate for even a second. It's just a meal, you know, help me scope out what kind of guy he is, she'd said cheerfully over the phone. You know how my mom is, every blind date she sets up is a total dud. I really don't want to go this time, but he's already made the reservation. It'd be rude to just stand him up. I'll admit it, I have a weakness. I'm soft-hearted. One, you're the best from her and I'd walk through fire. So that Friday afternoon, I took a half day off work, squeezed into the only little black dress I owned that didn't look completely shabby, and took a cab from the office to a hotel in the city center called Cloudtop. The hotel was impressive. The lobby ceiling soared at least 6 meters high, and the crystal chandeliers were so bright they made my eyes water. I walked to the elevator with my phone in hand and pressed the button for the 18th floor. When the doors slid open, I stepped into a corridor lined with thick burgundy carpet. The doors on both sides were shut tight, and the room numbers started at 1801, running in sequence down the hall. I counted the numbers as I walked to the end of the corridor. When I reached the door marked 1808, I knocked twice. No answer. I tried the handle, it wasn't locked. The door swung open with barely any effort. Hello, I started, then froze mid-sentence. This wasn't a private dining room at all. It was a private lounge. A dark walnut desk sat by the floor-to-ceiling windows, papers spread across its surface. A minimalist lamp standing beside it. The air carried a faint scent of cedarwood, completely different from the hotel's signature fragrance. A man sat behind the desk, head down, looking at a tablet. He only looked up slowly when he heard the door open. In that instant, one word flashed through my mind. Screwed. This was no blind date. The man wore a perfectly tailored dark grey shirt, sleeves rolled to his forearms, revealing a pair of lean, sharply defined wrists. His features were deeply cut, his brow and eyes carrying a cold, jagged sharpness like distant mountains on a winter morning. Handsome, yes, but radiating an unmistakable stay-away energy. When he raised his eyes to me, his gaze was utterly calm, as if I weren't a stranger who'd walked into the wrong room, but a character he'd expected to appear all along. I'm so sorry, wrong room. I'm looking for my blind date, room 1808. I apologized as I backed away, my hand already finding the door handle. The man set down his tablet and spoke. His words pinned me to the spot. This is 1808. You're here for a blind date. Yes, my friend had something come up, so I'm covering for her. I started to explain on autopilot, then stopped. Something felt off. Wait, are you the blind date? He didn't answer my question. Instead, he rose from his chair, walked around the desk, and leaned against its edge, watching me. He was tall, at least 185 centimeters in shoes, and standing there, he nearly blocked out all the light from the floor-to-ceiling windows. I noticed a silver tie pin on his collar, engraved with a small letter L. Walking into the wrong room is fate, he said, his voice low and steady, carrying a certainty that was oddly reassuring. Want to get married? I thought I'd misheard. I stared at him, my mind completely blank, like someone had hit the pause button on my life. Married? To this man I'd met less than 3 minutes ago, whose name I didn't even know. I'd walked into the wrong room. Not the wrong dimension. He must have seen the shock on my face. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly, the closest thing to an explanation he was willing to offer. My name is Lu Tingxiao, CEO of the Lu Group. My mother arranged a blind date here today. The intended match was supposed to be the daughter of the Ju family. Since you came in her place, and you pushed open this door, it means the fate between you and me is closer than the fate between her and me. The Lu Group, I'd heard of it. Anyone who'd worked in this city for more than 2 years knew about the Lu Group. Real estate, finance, technology, 3 pillars that propped up half the city's economic lifeline. And the name Lu Tingxiao, I'd heard it countless times in the gossip group by the office water cooler. The descriptions were always the same: ice-faced Yang Wang, untouchable, rumored to never go near women. I looked at this legendary figure standing before me and thought, the universe must be playing a joke on me. Me, Lin Xiaoman, an advertising agency planning specialist earning 8,000 a month, renting a rundown apartment in the old East District, counting every penny just to make rent. What had I done to deserve pushing open the door of the Lu Group's CEO and getting proposed to? Did you mistake me for someone else? I tried to keep my voice steady. I'm Lin Xiaoman. I don't know you at all. I didn't know your mother arranged a blind date. I'm just here for my friend. I know. He cut me off. His tone still calm. You're covering for Ju Yutong, right? I froze. He even knew Ju Yutong's name. Then what exactly was this so-called blind date? Lu Tingxiao seemed to read my confusion, but he didn't explain directly. Instead, he walked over to a small bar in the corner, poured 2 glasses of water, and handed one to me. I took it mechanically. When my fingers touched the warm glass, I realized my palms were slick with sweat. The blind date Ju Yutong arranged was supposed to be with me, but she changed the plan at the last minute and sent you to meet me instead. He laid it out plainly. Haven't you wondered why she didn't come herself? Why she sent you? I opened my mouth to say, she said something came up, but the words died in my throat. Ju Yutong had said she had something to do, but she never said what. I just believed her out of habit. I'd agreed to come out of habit, without asking a single follow-up question. She said come, and you came. Lu Tingxiao looked at me, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. You're quite loyal to your friends. It sounded like a compliment, but somehow it made my spine crawl. He walked back to his desk, pulled a file from a drawer, opened it, and placed it on the surface. Then he gestured for me to come closer. I hesitated, but I went. I looked down. It was a printed letter of intent. The header read, Strategic Cooperation Proposal between Ju's Building Materials and Lu's Real Estate, and in the column for the second party's representative, there it was, in black and white, Ju Yutong's signature. I recognized her handwriting, the slightly rounded flourish at the end of each stroke that was her habit. I stared at that signature for several seconds, and the fragments in my head began to snap together against my will. Ju Yutong had been busy lately. She told me she was freelancing, picking up small projects, but I'd woken up in the middle of the night more than once and seen her light still on, her computer screen filled with dense tables and documents. When I asked if she was stressed about work, she'd just smile and say it was nothing. Your friend wanted to use this blind date to establish a partnership with the Lu Group. Lu Tingxiao closed the file. She probably planned to have you come and go through the motions. If I didn't take an interest in you, she'd claim you were just a friend helping out, then come back later to negotiate with my mother directly. If I did take an interest in you, she'd have another bargaining chip to use. He paused. What she didn't expect was that you'd walk into the wrong room. I stood there, feeling unsteady on my feet. Wrong room. I'd counted the door numbers all the way down the hall. The 1808 plaque was right on this door. How could I have gone wrong? Before you came in, did anyone send you a message? Lu Tingxiao asked. I instinctively pulled out my phone and scrolled to my chat history with Ju Yutong. Her last message read, Xiaoman, are you there yet? The room number is 1808. Don't go to the wrong one. Hihi. I stared at that hihi and suddenly felt it was glaringly bright. I'd followed the room number exactly. How could I have gone wrong? Lu Tingxiao seemed to read my confusion. His gaze landed on my phone screen, and he spoke calmly. When you came up in the elevator, did you notice the layout of this floor? 1808 is the last room on this floor, with the door facing east. But there's another room before it. Its door number is half hidden by a potted plant at the corner of the hallway. If you only glance at the first half of the number, it's very easy to mistake it for 1808. My chest tightened. He was right. I had seen that door at the corner of the hallway. The number was mostly blocked by a tall fiddle leaf fig, and I'd taken one glance and assumed it was 1808. And in her message, Ju Yutong had specifically emphasized don't go to the wrong one, as if she knew in advance that I'd have my view blocked at that corner. You think she did it on purpose? My voice came out dry. Lu Tingxiao didn't answer directly. He set his glass on the desk and looked at me. What I think doesn't matter. What matters is that you walked through this door and sat down in front of me. My offer still stands. Want to get married? My mind was a mess. A dozen thoughts were fighting inside my head. One voice said, this man is insane. Get out of here now. Another voice asked, how much has Ju Yutong been hiding from you? I gripped my phone, knuckles white, and looked up at him. Why do you want to marry me? You don't even know me. I don't know you, he admitted readily. But I know you came in her place. I know you're an advertising planning specialist. I know you live in the East District. I know you go to work and come home. Nothing else. Your social circle is clean. He paused, studying me as if confirming something. What I need is exactly that, a wife with a simple background, no entanglements of interest, to deal with some pressure from home. So you're using me as a shield? I asked bluntly. He actually smiled at that. It was a faint smile, but it softened that cold, sharp face by a degree. Not a shield, let's call it mutual benefit. You help me handle my family, I give you a decent life, and on top of that, I can help you find out exactly what Ju Yutong is up to. I'll admit it, that last part got to me. 8 years of friendship with Ju Yutong couldn't collapse over a single letter of intent, but I also knew that if she didn't give me a reasonable explanation, I couldn't keep treating her as my best friend with a clear conscience. I was silent for a long time, so long that the rain outside shifted from a drizzle to a downpour. Lu Tingxiao didn't push me, he just stood by the window, waiting quietly. Aren't you afraid I have some other agenda? I asked. You agreed to go on a blind date for your friend, he countered. What other agenda could you possibly have? I was struck speechless. He was right. I didn't have a scheming bone in my body, otherwise I wouldn't have been used as a pawn in the first place. I thought it over, and thought it over again. Finally, I took a deep breath. Fine, I'll agree, but I have conditions. Name them. This relationship stays secret, it can't affect my job. I held up one finger. Second, I need time to figure out what Ju Yutong is really trying to do. Until then, no one else can know about us. I held up a second finger. And third, either of us can end this at any time. I don't want you binding me with contracts or anything else. He listened to my conditions, was quiet for a moment, then nodded. Fine, but I have one condition of my own. What? You have to move into my place. He looked at me, his tone leaving no room for argument. Since we're married, even if it's only on paper, it has to look like a real marriage, otherwise, my mother won't buy it. I bit my lip, wrestling with it internally. Moving wasn't actually that hard for me. The apartment I was renting was a shared place, and after my roommate moved out, the other room had been sitting empty. I'd been covering the full rent on my own for 2 months now, and it was starting to strain my budget. Lu Tingxiao's demand came out of nowhere, but from a practical standpoint, it actually solved a pretty significant financial headache for me. Okay, I nodded. I'll go home and pack. That night, standing at the door of Lu Tingxiao's apartment with my suitcase in hand, I finally realized how insane this whole thing was. The apartment was on the top floor of a high-rise in the city center. The elevator required a keycard to access the floor, and the door lock was iris recognition. He stood at the entrance, stepping aside slightly to let me go in first. The place was spotless. The decor was minimalist, all gray and white, with sparse furniture that all radiated quality. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the entire city skyline, neon lights bleeding into soft, blurred halos through the rain. I stood at the entryway, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings, and suddenly felt like I was in a dream. That morning, I'd been rushing to finish a proposal at work. At noon, I'd grabbed a sandwich from the convenience store. In the afternoon, I'd been worrying about my best friend's blind date, and now, by nightfall, I was moving into a stranger's home. The bedroom is at the end of the hall. There are new toiletries in the closet. He stood in the living room, his tone flat, like he was arranging something completely routine. Tomorrow morning, I'll have Chen Mo drive you to work. Send him your address. Chen Mo, my assistant. He paused, then looked at me. From now on, if you need anything, just contact him directly. I'm busy during the day, so I might not be able to reply to messages right away. I nodded, dragging my suitcase toward the bedroom. As I passed him, I caught a faint scent of cedarwood, the same smell as in his office. I kept my head down, walked quickly past him, stepped into the bedroom, and shut the door. Leaning against the door panel, I let out a long breath. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Ju Yutong. Xiaoman, how'd it go? Is the blind date guy decent? I stared at that message for a long time, my finger hovering over the screen, not knowing what to reply. In the end, I typed just a few words. His okay. I just went into the wrong room after I sent it. There was a long silence on the other end, so long that I thought she wasn't going to reply at all. Then my phone lit up again. Wrong room. Then who did you see? I looked at her message. There was an urgency in those words, completely different from her usual casual, offhand tone. I gripped my phone, and suddenly, Lu Tingxiao's words came back to me. She told you to come, and you came. You're pretty loyal to your friends, I replied. No one, just some guy who walked into the wrong room. I apologized and left. After that message, Ju Yutong went quiet again for a while, then replied with a single "oh," nothing more. I put my phone down and walked to the window, watching the rain still falling outside. My mind was a mess, like a crumpled piece of paper. Lu Tingxiao said he'd help me get to the bottom of Ju Yutong's situation, but I didn't know if I could trust him. We'd only known each other for a few hours. How much weight did his promises really carry? I had no idea. A soft knock came from the door. I turned and opened it. Lu Tingxiao stood there, holding a glass of warm milk. He handed it to me, his tone even. Drink this and get some sleep. You have things to do tomorrow. I took the glass, my fingertips brushing against the warm ceramic. I looked up at him and saw that he was looking at me, a faint, almost imperceptible softness in his eyes. Good night. He turned and walked away. I stood at the door, holding the milk, watching his silhouette disappear down the hallway. Something in my chest was touched, just slightly. I couldn't name the feeling. All I knew was that the milk was warmer than I'd expected. The next morning, Chen Mo showed up right on time downstairs. He looked to be around 30, dressed in a dark suit, his expression meticulous and composed. When he saw me, he gave a slight nod. Miss Lin, Mr. Lu asked me to drive you to work. I got into the back seat with my bag, watching the familiar yet unfamiliar streets pass by outside, still trying to process everything that had happened. When we reached the office building, I hesitated before getting out and asked Chen Mo, Lu Tingxiao, does he do stuff like this with everyone? You know, proposing marriage to someone he just met. Chen Mo glanced at me in the rearview mirror, his expression unchanged. Mr. Lu isn't the type to act casually, you can rest assured, Miss Lin. His answer was very official, but I felt like there was something underneath it. I nodded, pushed open the door, and stepped out. Before I even reached the company entrance, my phone rang. The screen showed Sister Zhao's name. I answered, and her voice came through, lowered. Xiaoman, be careful when you go in today. Someone's spreading rumors in the group chat, saying you found yourself a sugar daddy and didn't come home last night. I stopped in my tracks, standing at the company entrance, my fingers tightening around the phone. Who said that? I don't know. Sister Zhao paused. But someone posted it in the group at 6 this morning. They attached a photo of you getting out of a car. The license plate was blurred out, but the model of the car, it's definitely not an ordinary one. I looked back at the black sedan that had already driven away, feeling like something was stuck in my chest. After that from Ju Yutong last night, I should have known she wouldn't just let it go. I took a deep breath, pushed open the door, and walked into the building. Only one thought ran through my mind. This show was just getting started. As I walked through the company entrance, I deliberately switched my phone to silent. Sister Zhao was waiting for me at the elevator, holding a cup of American coffee. She handed it to me, her eyes darting around the room. Drink something hot first, steady your nerves. I took the coffee, feeling the warmth of the paper cup against my fingertips, but my heart was still cold. The elevator climbed slowly, the floor numbers ticking up one by one. I stared at the screen, but my mind was on that photo. The person getting out of the black car, wearing a beige trench coat with her hair in a ponytail, was definitely me. But whoever took that photo had been waiting for a while, from the car pulling up and stopping, to me opening the door and getting out, to the car driving away. There was at least a 2-minute window. 2 minutes was more than enough time to capture a clear shot of my face. I thought about that Ju Yutong had sent in the early hours, and the string in my chest pulled even tighter. Sister Zhao stood beside me, her voice low. At the morning meeting today, the director might ask about your proposal from yesterday. I made some edits to your cloud coffee pitch, added a few data points. Just follow the parts 1 highlighted in red and you'll be fine. I blinked, turning to look at her. Sister Zhao, you don't thank me. She waved a hand dismissively. When I hired you, I could already tell, you're a solid worker. You shouldn't get dragged down by something like this. The gossip online, just let it blow over. Don't lose your footing over it. The elevator doors opened, and I followed her into the office area. A few co-workers at the desks along the corridor glanced up at me, then quickly looked back down, pretending to be busy. That kind of look was subtle, like they wanted to confirm something but didn't want me to notice. I gripped my coffee cup, kept walking, and went straight to my desk. My computer booted up, and WeChat messages popped up. It was the group chat for the new project. There was a message sent at 7 this morning, from a person named Liu Yang, the new intern in our department. The message was simple. Sister Lin, congratulations, heard you found yourself a good man, followed by a smirking emoji. No one in the group replied, but the read count kept climbing. I stared at that message, my fingers resting on the keyboard, wanting to type something back but feeling like anything I said would be wrong. Sister Zhao cleared her throat beside me. I looked up, and she shook her head at me, signaling me to ignore it. I took a deep breath, closed the group chat window, opened my work documents, read through the parts Sister Zhao had highlighted, and started reviewing the PPT. At 10 o'clock sharp, the director pushed open the door. She was a woman in her early 40s, surnamed Cheng, with short hair and a no-nonsense attitude. She swept her gaze across the people in the meeting room, pausing on me for a moment, then opened the file in her hand. The cloud coffee proposal needs to be presented to the client this afternoon. Lin Xiaoman, you'll present it. I stood up, opened the PPT, and as I started on the first page, I caught a glimpse of Liu Yang sitting in the corner, his phone screen lit up, looking like he was sending messages again. I forced my attention back to the screen and walked through the overall concept, the target audience analysis, and the media placement strategy. When I got to the budget allocation, Director Cheng suddenly interrupted. This budget, the client has cut it by 20%. Redo it based on the original framework and get it to me by 2 o'clock this afternoon. I nodded. Understood. I'll have it done as soon as possible. Director Cheng didn't say anything else. She closed her file and left, the others in. The meeting room gradually got up. A few co-workers I had decent relationships with nodded at me but didn't say much before leaving. Liu Yang was the last to go. As he passed me, he paused for a moment and said in a low voice, "Sister Lin, don't blame me for speaking my mind. That guy you're seeing, he's the owner of that car from this morning, isn't he?" I looked up at him. He had a half smile on his face, like he was testing me, or waiting to see how I'd react. I closed my laptop, my voice calm. "Liu Yang, you just joined the company. There are things you don't understand yet, and I don't hold that against you. But if you actually want to make it in this industry, you should learn that other people's private lives don't belong in the work group chat." His smile froze for a second. He didn't say anything else. Just turned and walked away. I carried my laptop back to my desk, opened a new budget spreadsheet, and started recalculating. The numbers jumped across the table, but my mind was drifting far away. That black sedan belonged to Lu Tingxiao. He'd driven me to work this morning. He hadn't gotten out of the car, but if someone dug up the license plate from that photo, this wouldn't just be office gossip anymore. The Lu Group was well known in the city. Even ordinary people had heard the name Lu Tingxiao once or twice. If I was photographed getting out of his car and it got spread online, the consequences. Just as I was thinking about it, my phone screen lit up. It was a WeChat message from an unknown number, with the note Lu Tingxiao. I tapped it open and saw a message from him. "Free for lunch. Let's grab something to eat." I stared at those words for a few seconds. We'd only added each other on WeChat last night. He just said contact me if anything comes up, and I'd assumed it was just a formality. I never expected him to actually reach out first. I replied with a single okay, then added, "Is there anywhere good to eat near your office?" He replied quickly, "I'll pick you up." I put my phone down, staring at the words "I'll pick you up" on the screen, and my heart inexplicably skipped a beat. I flipped the phone over and set it face down on the desk, going back to the budget spreadsheet, but my mind was already wandering, replaying the scene from last night. The way he stood at the door handing me the milk, the faint gentleness in his voice when he said goodnight, and the way he'd said, "You're pretty loyal to your friends." I didn't know if that was a compliment or a warning, but it had stuck with me all this time. At noon, I cleared my desk, grabbed my bag, and headed downstairs. A grey sedan sat at the company entrance, not the black one from this morning. The window rolled down, and Lu Tingxiao was in the driver's seat, wearing a dark blue shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms, revealing a clean, defined wrist. He tilted his head toward me. "Get in." I opened the door and slid into the passenger seat, buckling my seatbelt. The car carried a faint leather scent, mixed with the cedarwood smell that clung to him. It was oddly calming. He didn't ask what I wanted to eat. He just pulled out of the main street, cut through 2 alleys, and stopped in front of an unassuming little eatery. The storefront was small, with an old wooden sign hanging above it that read, "Zhong's Noodle House." I looked at him, a little surprised. "This is where you usually eat, he said, killing the engine and unbuckling his seatbelt. "I've been eating the noodles here for 10 years. I followed him through the door. The place was nearly empty. The owner was a man in his 50s, and he greeted Lu Tingxiao like an old friend, grinning as he called out, "Mr. Lu." "The usual." Lu Tingxiao nodded, then glanced at me. "What do you want?" I studied the handwritten menu on the wall and ordered a bowl of beef noodles. The owner acknowledged with a quick coming right up and disappeared into the kitchen. I sat down across from Lu Tingxiao and looked around. The shop was small but spotless. A few bottles of chili sauce and vinegar sat on a shelf against the wall, and a handful of yellowed old photos hung there too, looking like they'd been up for years. Lu Tingxiao picked up the teapot, poured me a cup, and slid it over. "Sleep well last night." I took the cup, my fingers brushing against his. I pulled back reflexively. "Fine." He glanced at me but didn't press further. When the noodles arrived, steam rose off the bowls. The beef was fall-apart tender, the broth rich and savory, the noodles chewy. I took a bite and couldn't help grabbing another mouthful. Lu Tingxiao ate his plain noodle soup slowly, methodically, occasionally lifting his eyes to look at me without saying a word. His gaze made me uneasy. I set down my chopsticks. When you had Chen Mo drive me this morning, you already knew someone at the company was taking photos, didn't you? His chopsticks paused mid-air. He looked up at me. Yes. Then why didn't you warn me? Warning you wouldn't have changed anything, he said, finishing his bowl and setting down his chopsticks. He pulled a napkin and wiped his mouth. The photos were already out. Better to act like you don't know and let them make the first move, than to panic and react blindly. I frowned. You're that sure they'll make a move? He picked up his teacup, took a sip, and said flatly, when Ju Yutong sent you that room number, she didn't use her own WeChat, she used a burner account, and that account was registered under her boyfriend's name. My chopsticks clattered onto the table. I stared at him. Boyfriend? Since when does she have a boyfriend? Lu Tingxiao set down his cup, his gaze settling on me. You didn't know. I shook my head. Ju Yutong and I had known each other for 3 years, and she'd never once mentioned a boyfriend. When we talked, it was always about work, shopping, binge-watching shows, occasionally complaining about her family pressuring her to marry, saying she didn't want to settle for just anyone. I'd always assumed she was single, but now, her boyfriend's surname is Yang, Lu Tingxiao said, the young master of Yang family building materials. We've crossed paths on a few business deals. He's been competing with me for a project recently. When your friend came to you about the blind date, he had her send you the wrong room number to put you in front of me. My mind went blank. It took me a moment to find my voice. You're saying, Ju Yutong deliberately sent me the wrong room number, just to get me to meet you, more precisely, to get you in front of me, he said. Their original plan was for Ju Yutong to meet me herself, under the guise of a blind date, and use that to talk business, but she backed out at the last minute. She didn't want to do it herself, so she used you as a stand-in. She figured you'd walk into the wrong room, I'd get annoyed, and I'd kick you out. What she didn't expect was that I'd propose marriage. A faint smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. So, right about now, she's probably regretting it, regretting she didn't come herself. I stared at him, my thoughts tangled like a knot of wires, impossible to unravel. Ju Yutong had used me as a pawn, throwing me into a game she didn't dare play herself. She never once considered what I might face, what I might go through, whether I'd be embarrassed, humiliated. She only cared about one thing. If it worked, she'd reap the rewards. If it failed, I'd take the blame. It had nothing to do with her. I looked down at the soup left in my bowl. It had gone cold, a thin film of oil floating on the surface. A chill spread through me, starting at my fingertips and sinking all the way into my chest. Last night, you said you'd help me look into her, I said, lifting my head. You've already found this much. I've found some things, he said. The rest I'll tell you when you're ready to hear it. He called the owner over, paid the bill, and stood up. I followed him out. As we stepped through the door, the afternoon sun hit the mouth of the alley, casting golden light across his shoulders and sharpening his silhouette. He turned to look at me. Back to work this afternoon? I nodded. I have a meeting at 2. I'll drive you. He drove me back to the company in silence. I sat in the passenger seat, watching the streets blur past the window, my mind churning over everything he'd said. Ju Yutong's boyfriend was the young master of Yang family building materials. He was competing with Lu Tingxiao for a project. He'd had Ju Yutong send me to Lu Tingxiao. It was all a chain, link after link, and I was just the smallest, most insignificant piece in the whole thing. The car stopped at the company entrance. I unbuckled my seatbelt and reached for the door handle when Lu Tingxiao's voice stopped me. Lin Xiaoman. I turned to look at him. He was sitting in the driver's seat, head tilted toward me, his gaze steady. Any plans tonight? No, I'll have Chen Mo pick you up. You're coming to my place for dinner. I blinked. Your place? My mother's here, he said. She wants to meet you. My heart shot straight into my throat. I gripped the seatbelt tighter. Your mother's here? That fast? We only just, she's well connected, he said flatly. She called me first thing this morning, asking if I'd gotten married. I said yes. She said she wants to meet you. I opened my mouth, then closed it. Anything I said felt pointless. I'd married a stranger last night, and now I was meeting my mother-in-law today. This was moving so fast I didn't even have time to react. Don't be nervous, he said, as if reading my mind. My mother's sharp with her words, but her heart's in the right place. Just keep quiet and eat plenty. I gave a bitter smile. You say that like I'm walking into a trap. The corner of his mouth twitched. like he wanted to laugh but held it back. It's not a trap, but you should be prepared. My mother's been in the business world for 30 years. She reads people well. If you're hiding something, she'll see it in one glance. I took a deep breath. All right, got it. I pushed the door open and stepped out, standing on the curb as I watched his car merge into traffic and disappear around the corner. The afternoon wind was cool, tugging at the hem of my clothes. I looked down at my phone. The screen still showed the message he'd sent. I'll pick you up tonight. I put my phone away and walked back into the company building. In the elevator, I smoothed my hair against the reflective metal doors, staring at the slightly tense face looking back at me. I told myself, Lin Xiaoman, you've already come this far. You have no choice but to keep going. The afternoon meeting went smoothly. After I finished revising the budget sheet, Director Cheng gave it a look and, for once, nodded in approval. Good work. Send me the final version before you leave today. I acknowledged, returned to my desk, and sent out the file. The clock in the corner of my screen read 5:40, 20 minutes until the end of the day. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my tired eyes. When my phone buzzed, it was a message from Ju Yutong. Xiaoman, are you free tonight? Want to grab dinner? There's something I want to talk to you about. I stared at the message, my finger hovering over the screen. What would she say if she knew I was meeting Lu Tingxiao's mother tonight? I hesitated for a few seconds, then replied, busy tonight, rain check. A moment passed before she responded, all right, another time then. By the way, who did you actually end up meeting at that blind date yesterday? I've asked you like 3 times and you never answered. I read the message, and a complicated feeling welled up inside me. She was still testing me, trying to find out who I'd met, trying to see if I'd discovered anything. I didn't call her out, I just replied, just some guy who walked into the wrong room, nothing worth talking about. She sent back a single "oh, nothing more." I set down my phone and looked out the window at the darkening sky. A strange calm settled over me. She could play her game, I'd walk my own path, and when I had all the answers, I'd settle this score with her properly. After work, I walked out of the company and found the grey sedan waiting at the curb. Lu Tingxiao was leaning against the door, looking at his phone. He looked up at the sound of my footsteps, pocketed his phone, and opened the passenger door for me. Get in. I slid in and buckled up. He started the engine and merged into the evening rush. Neon lights flickered on one by one outside the window, washing the city in a warm orange glow. I leaned back in my seat, watching the red taillights stretch ahead of us, and let out a long breath. What does your mom like to eat? I asked. I can't show up empty-handed for a first meeting. Don't bring anything, he said. She has everything she needs. That's not the point, I insisted. This is my first time meeting an elder. I can't just show up with nothing. Tell me what she likes. I'll pick something up on the way. He was quiet for a moment, then said, she likes tea, especially Mingqian Longjing. There's a tea shop at the next intersection. If you really want to buy something, get a small tin, nothing too expensive. I nodded, filing it away. The car stopped at the intersection, and I pushed the door open, hurrying into the tea shop. I picked out a tin of Mingqian Longjing, simple packaging, reasonable price. I paid, walked back to the car, and set the bag in the back seat. He glanced at the bag but said nothing. Still, the curve of his mouth seemed to soften just a little. The car drove into an upscale residential area and stopped in front of a standalone villa. I followed him out, standing at the gate, staring at the dark wooden door as my heartbeat quickened again. He walked ahead, pushed the door open, and looked back at me. Come in. I took a deep breath and stepped over the threshold. I changed into slippers at the entrance and followed him into the living room. The room was brightly lit. A woman in a dark blue chipao sat on the sofa, flipping through a magazine. She looked up at the sound of footsteps. Her gaze lingered on me for a moment, then she set the magazine aside, rose with a smile, and said, so you're Xiaoman. Her tone was warm, her smile polished, but I could feel something sharper beneath it, a kind of appraisal, like she was examining a piece of porcelain in a display case, studying its quality, its craftsmanship, deciding whether it deserved a place in a house like this. I gave a slight bow. Hello, Auntie, I'm Lin Xiaoman. For our first meeting, I brought you some tea, Mingqian Longjing. I hope you like it. She took the bag, glanced at it, and set it lightly on the coffee table without saying whether she liked it or not. That's thoughtful. Have a seat. Don't just stand there. I sat down on the sofa, and Lu Tingxiao settled in beside me. A server brought over freshly brewed tea and set it before us. Mrs. Lu lifted her cup, blew gently across the surface, took a sip, then set it down and turned her gaze to me. Xiaoman, Tingxiao tells me you two met yesterday. I nodded. Yes, yesterday at the hotel. I went into the wrong room and happened to run into Mr. Liu. The wrong room, she raised an eyebrow, as if the explanation amused her. That really is quite a coincidence. You got your marriage certificate less than a day after meeting, and I only found out this morning. Honestly, I'm a little surprised. Her words were perfectly polite, but every syllable carried a quiet probe. I couldn't tell if she genuinely cared about her son's marriage or if she was trying to size up this suddenly appeared daughter-in-law to see what she was made of. I lifted my own cup and took a sip, letting the warm tea slide down my throat to steady my voice. Auntie, I know this all sounds rushed, but since I've already gotten the certificate with Mr. Liu, I intend to take this relationship seriously. She studied me, her gaze holding something I couldn't quite name, surprise, perhaps, or something else entirely. After a long pause, she suddenly smiled. You're a straightforward girl, I'll give you that. My son here, he's never been one for talking much. I was starting to worry he'd end up a bachelor for life. Never expected him to bring home a wife yesterday. Her tone was half serious, half teasing, and the tension in the room seemed to loosen a little. I set down my cup and chose my words carefully. Auntie, you're joking, Mr. Liu. He's wonderful, wonderful. She laughed and shook her head. That's a simple way to put it. He's had plenty of girls chasing after him since he was young, and he never gave any of them a second look. I always wondered what kind of woman he'd end up with. Never thought it'd be someone who walked into the wrong room. I caught the implication beneath her words. She was testing me, trying to determine whether I'd truly stumbled in by accident or if I had ulterior motives. I didn't rush to defend myself. I just met her gaze calmly. Auntie, I know this sounds like something out of a story, but that's exactly what happened. I went to a blind date for a friend, took the wrong floor, and walked into Mr. Liu's room. He said sitting together by mistake was fate, and asked if I'd marry him. I said yes. Mrs. Liu's hand paused around her teacup. Her eyes lingered on my face for a few seconds, as if trying to read whether I was telling the truth. Lu Tingxiao sat beside me, silent the whole time, just listening. The moment I finished speaking, he reached over and gently placed his hand over mine where it rested on my knee. His palm was warm, carrying a steady, reassuring pressure. I turned to look at him, but he was watching his mother, his voice calm. Mom, she's telling the truth. I proposed. She accepted. If you have a problem with it, take it up with me. Mrs. Liu looked at him, then at me. She was quiet for a moment before setting down her cup with a soft laugh. All right, I haven't even said anything yet and you're already defending her. Do you think I'm going to eat your wife or something? She rose from her seat and headed toward the kitchen. I'll go check on dinner. You two sit tight. Once she was gone, the living room fell quiet. I looked down at his hand, still resting over mine. My fingers twitched slightly, and he seemed to notice, pulling his hand back and picking up his teacup with a casual air. That's just how my mom is, sharp tongue, but no real malice behind it. I nodded, but my mind was still lingering on what he'd said earlier. Take it up with me. He'd stood between me and his mother's probing questions without hesitation. For the first time, I felt like this whirlwind marriage might not be the simple transaction I'd originally thought it was. Dinner was served soon after, 4 dishes and a soup, home-style cooking. Mrs. Liu didn't bring up the marriage certificate again during the meal. She only asked about my work, and I answered honestly. When she heard I did planning at an ad agency, she nodded approvingly. Planning is a good field, requires a sharp mind, creative thinking. The Liu Group has a marketing department too. If you ever want to switch jobs, you can have Tingxiao arrange it. I smiled. Thank you, Auntie. But for now, I'd like to keep learning in a place I'm familiar with. She glanced at me, said nothing more, and picked up a piece of food with her chopsticks. After dinner, Lu Tingxiao walked me out. At the front gate, he spoke up unexpectedly. You handled yourself better in front of my mom than I expected. I blinked, looking up at him. Is that a compliment? He looked at me, the streetlight catching in his eyes like scattered stars, something like that. I felt a little flustered under his gaze and looked down, kicking at a small pebble by my foot. So, did I pass with your mom? You passed the first round, he said, but she's got a long evaluation period. You'll have plenty more to deal with. I sighed. You're right, this marriage of mine was pretty hasty. He smiled then, faint, but more genuine than any smile I'd seen from him before. Hasty, maybe, but that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. I didn't respond, and he didn't push. The car was parked at the curb, and he opened the door for me. Come on, I'll take you home. I got in and watched through the window as the villa's lights receded. A strange feeling welled up inside me. I was stepping into an unfamiliar world, a world with Lu Tingxiao, his shrewd mother, the trap Ju Yutong had set, and a past of his that I knew nothing about. The car pulled out of the neighborhood and merged into the city's flow. I leaned back in my seat, watching the lights drift past the window. When my phone buzzed, I looked down. A message from Ju Yutong. Xiaoman, I heard you got into a grey car today. Whose car is that? Did you get a boyfriend? I stared at the message, my finger hovering over the screen. I thought for a long time, then typed 2 words. No, I didn't. The moment I hit send, I knew with absolute clarity that something between Ju Yutong and me had shifted forever that night. The rain fell without stopping. I lay in bed, tossing and turning, Ju Yutong's message replaying in my mind. She'd asked whose car it was, and I'd said no one's. She hadn't pressed further, but I knew she wouldn't let it go. She knew me too well. She knew I bit my lip when I lied. The next morning, I went to work as usual. I'd barely sat down at my desk when Sister Zhao walked over with a cup of coffee, leaning against the cubicle divider. Xiaoman, you look terrible. Didn't sleep last night. I rubbed my temples, a little insomnia. It's nothing. Sister Zhao didn't press, she just patted my shoulder. We've got a client meeting this morning. You're coming with me, don't mess it up. I nodded and opened my laptop to pull up the materials. The meeting room was on the 10th floor. I followed Sister Zhao in, clutching my folder. And the moment the door swung open, I froze. At the far end of the long conference table sat a man in a sharp suit, head down, reviewing a document. It wasn't Lu Tingxiao, but something about his features struck me as vaguely familiar. He looked up at the sound of the door, his gaze landing on me for 2 seconds before a slight smile curved at the corner of his mouth. Manager Zhao, and who is this? Sister Zhao smiled and introduced me. This is Lin Xiaoman, one of our planning specialists. Xiaoman, this is President Ju of Ju Group, Ju Yangming. He's here today to discuss the collaboration project. Ju Yangming, Ju Yutong's brother. My mind went blank for a second, but I kept a composed smile on my face and gave a slight nod. Hello, President Ju. His gaze lingered on me a moment longer than necessary before he looked away. Miss Lin seems a bit tense. Have a seat. No need to be formal. The meeting lasted 40 minutes, covering the branding strategy for a new project. I took notes diligently the whole time, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Ju Yanming's eyes kept drifting toward me, carrying an unreadable weight. When the meeting ended, Sister Zhao left first. As I gathered my materials, Ju Yanming's voice cut through the room. Miss Lin, hold on a moment. I stopped and turned. He stood by the window, a cup of water in hand, his tone casual. You know my sister, Yutong, don't you? My heart tightened, but I kept my expression neutral. Yes, we're friends. Ju Yangming smiled. She's mentioned you, said you're a genuine, down-to-earth girl. He paused, then shifted gears. Though lately, she seems a bit upset. Do you know why? The question hung in the air, loaded with implication. My fingers tightened around the folder, but I didn't answer right away. Ju Yangming didn't wait for one. He set down his cup and walked toward the door. As he passed me, he lowered his voice. Lu Tingxiao isn't a simple man. Miss Lin, watch your back. I stood there, watching his retreating figure, a swirl of complicated emotions churning in my chest. Was that a warning, or a test? I made my way back to my desk and had just sat down when my phone buzzed. A message from Lu Tingxiao. Free for lunch. Let's grab something. I stared at the message for a moment, then typed back one word. Sure. At lunch break, I walked out of the office building and saw his familiar black car parked at the curb. I opened the door and slid in, warm air washing over me. He sat in the driver's seat, turning to look at me. Met with a client this morning. Yeah, Ju Yangming from Ju Group. I buckled my seatbelt and turned to face him. He brought up Yutong. Lu Tingxiao's fingers paused on the steering wheel, his voice even. What did he say? He said you're not a simple man, and told me to watch my back. I repeated it plainly, my eyes fixed on his profile. Do you know him? Lu Tingxiao didn't answer right away. He started the engine and pulled into traffic, silent for a long moment before speaking. Ju Yangming and I have done business over the years, a few dealings here and there. On the surface, he's all politeness, but behind the scenes, he's got plenty of tricks. He paused. As for his sister and you, I had Chen Mo look into it. My heart skipped a beat. You investigated Yutong, and his tone was matter-of-fact, as if discussing the weather. That blind date she set up for you, the guy never existed, and that room number, she sent it to you on purpose. Even though I'd suspected as much, hearing it confirmed out loud sent a chill through me. My fingers tightened on the seatbelt, my voice coming out rough. Why would she do that? Lu Tingxiao didn't answer directly. He reached into the glove compartment, pulled out a manila folder, and handed it to me. See for yourself. I opened it. Inside were printed screenshots of chat logs and a photocopy of a cooperation agreement. In the screenshots, Ju Yutong was messaging someone saved as Mr. Wang, and the more I read, the more my stomach churned. She was orchestrating a blind date setup. Mr. Wang was a competitor of the Lu Group, and they'd planned to use the date as a way to get close to Lu Tingxiao and steal commercial secrets from the Lu Group's new project. The 1808 room Ju Yutong had sent me to was originally meant for someone Mr. Wang had arranged, but Ju Yutong had changed her mind at the last minute and sent the room number to me instead. I stared at those chat logs, my fingers trembling. So, she sent me to that date to be her pawn. Essentially, Lu Tingxiao's voice was flat, but she didn't count on you walking into the wrong room, and she definitely didn't count on you running into me. I closed the folder and took a deep breath, my mind a tangled mess. I'd known Ju Yutong for 5 years, from college all the way to now. We'd shared apartments, pulled all-nighters together through brutal work deadlines, and I'd held her while she sobbed through her worst breakup. I never once imagined she'd do something like this to me. So what are you going to do? Lu Tingxiao asked. I was quiet for a long moment before I finally spoke. I want to talk to her first. He didn't try to stop me, he just glanced at me in the rearview mirror. Want me to come with you? No, I said. This is between her and me. He nodded and didn't push it. The car pulled up outside a restaurant, and he opened the door to let me out. I walked inside, took a seat by the window, and stared out at the street, but my mind kept churning through those chat logs I'd seen. I pulled out my phone and opened Ju Yutong's WeChat profile. Her avatar was still that photo of us from the amusement park last year, 2 girls grinning ear to ear. I stared at it for a long time. In the end, I didn't send her a message. Back at the office that afternoon, Sister Zhao called me into her office and handed me a stack of files. Xiaoman, this new project's proposal, the client specifically requested you to lead it. I blinked. They requested me by name. Sister Zhao nodded. The client's contact said they saw some of your previous campaigns and thought your approach was fresh. They want you as the lead writer. She paused, then lowered her voice. This client is a subsidiary under the Lu Group. Xiaoman, do you know someone over at Lu's? My heart lurched, but I kept my face neutral. No, probably just a coincidence. She gave me a long look but didn't press further, just told me to do a good job. I carried the files back to my desk and opened the first page. When I saw the project name, my breath caught. It was the Lu Group's new season brand integration campaign. I stared at those words, and I knew this wasn't a coincidence. Lu Tingxiao was helping me. In his own way, he was paving a path for me. But was this a path I should walk? That evening, as I walked out of the office building, I spotted Ju Yutong standing under the street lamp by the entrance. She was wearing a cream-colored coat. Head down, scrolling through her phone. She'd clearly been waiting for a while. When she looked up and saw me, her face broke into that familiar smile. Xiaoman, off work, I happened to be in the area and thought we could grab dinner. I looked at that familiar face, and a storm of emotions churned inside me. I tightened my grip on my bag strap, not answering right away. Yutong, there's something I need to ask you. The smile on her face flickered. What is it? You look so serious. I took a deep breath. The room number you sent me that day, was it really 1808? Her smile finally froze solid. The streetlight fell across her face, and in that instant, her expression seemed to blur, like a mask she'd worn for years had finally cracked. After a few seconds of silence, she suddenly laughed. It was a laugh tinged with resignation and a hint of mockery. Xiaoman, so you know. I stared at her, something in my chest twisting hard. Why? Ju Yutong's smile faded, and her gaze turned flat. Because I needed you to do me a favor. That blind date setup was supposed to be a meeting I was arranging with a client. I didn't want to go myself, so I sent you in my place, but I didn't expect you to walk into the wrong room, and I definitely didn't expect you to run into Lu Tingxiao. She paused. Xiaoman, do you realize, you meeting him turned out to be a good thing for me? I frowned. What do you mean? She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Lu Tingxiao has a grudge against my brother. He stole a major project from the Ju Group, cost my brother tens of millions. I was planning to get close to him through that blind date, fish some information out of him. But you ended up sitting in that room instead. She looked at me with something in her eyes I couldn't read. And now you're married to him. You're Mrs. Lu. Xiaoman, do me a favor, get a document for me. From Lu Tingxiao, I stepped back, staring at her like I was seeing her for the first time. Yutong, you've lost your mind. She smiled, a light smile that somehow felt utterly foreign. I haven't lost anything. Xiaoman, I've known you for 5 years. I know you have a soft heart. That's why I sent you. Do this one thing for me, and we're even. My grip on my bag strap tightened until my nails nearly bit into my palm. I looked at that face, so familiar, and yet so alien, and my voice trembled. What am I to you? A pawn? Ju Yutong was quiet for a moment, then said softly, Xiaoman, that's just how the world works. Everyone has to look out for themselves. Do this one thing for me, and I won't bother you again. I looked at her, and I felt something inside me shatter. The girl who'd stayed by my side through countless sleepless nights. The girl who'd held me when I was heartbroken and whispered, it's okay, you've got me. That girl was standing in front of me now, transforming into someone I didn't recognize at all. I took a deep breath, turned, and walked away. I didn't look back. Her voice drifted after me. Xiaoman, think about it. I didn't stop. I walked to the intersection, flagged down a taxi, and gave the driver the address for Lu Group. Outside the window, the city lights streamed past in the darkness. I leaned back in my seat, closed my eyes, and never once unclenched my fist when I reached the Lu Group building. I got out and looked up at the towering structure. The lights on the top floor were still on. I pulled out my phone and sent Lu Tingxiao a message. I'm downstairs. Less than 2 minutes later, the elevator doors slid open in the lobby. Lu Tingxiao walked out, still in his daytime suit, his shirt collar unbuttoned, one button at the neck. When he saw me, his steps faltered for just a beat before he walked over. What's wrong? I met his eyes, my voice hoarse. Ju Yutong came to see me. She asked me to steal a document from you. His expression barely shifted. He just watched me quietly, waiting for me to finish. I took a breath. I didn't agree, but I don't know what she'll do next. He was silent for a moment. Then, without warning, he reached out and gently took my clenched fist in his hand. His palm was warm, and one by one, he pried my fingers open. You don't need to worry about what she does. Just tell me one thing, do you trust me? I looked up at him. The streetlight reflected in his eyes like a deep, bottomless lake. I looked for a long time. Finally, I nodded. I do. The corner of his mouth curved a faint smile, but it steadied something inside me. He released my hand. His tone gentle. Come on, I'll take you home. We'll deal with tomorrow when it comes. I followed him into the car, watching through the window as the lights of the Lu Group building dimmed floor by floor. My phone buzzed in my bag. I didn't check it. I didn't need to guess who it was from. I flipped the phone face down on my knee and let my gaze drift across the flowing night outside. But my mind was clearer than it had been in a long time this time. I wasn't going to let Ju Yutong pull my strings that night. Lu Tingxiao drove me back to the apartment. When the car stopped downstairs, he didn't kill the engine right away. The streetlight outside stretched both our shadows long across the pavement. I unbuckled my seatbelt and was about to open the door when he spoke. You don't need to worry about Ju Yutong anymore. I turned to look at him. His profile was sharp in the dim light, his voice flat but carrying a weight that was oddly reassuring. Chen Mo already has the evidence. The company she and her brother Ju Kai set up together, it's tied to a competitor that lost out in the Lu Group's acquisition last year. They were planning to use you to get internal project documents, so they could rig the bidding next quarter. I froze. The taut string inside me loosened a fraction, then tightened again. You knew all along, he hummed in acknowledgement. From the moment you walked into my suite that day, I had someone look into Ju Yutong. The room number she sent you was originally 1806. She'd arranged for someone she knew to be waiting in that room, to get you to sign an intent agreement on her behalf. But she sent the wrong number. She sent you 1808. My private lounge. I opened my mouth, but it took me a moment to find my voice. So, when you said sitting in the wrong seat is fate, want to get married, that day, it was because you knew she'd set a trap. He turned to look at me, his gaze settling on my face, half and half. I knew she'd set a trap, but I didn't know it would be you walking through that door. His voice dropped. That day, you pushed the door open, clutching your phone, looking at me with this completely bewildered expression, asking, is this room 1808? I thought to myself, she's not like them. I didn't know what to say. The memory of that day flooded back, standing in the doorway, looking at the man on the sofa. He was wearing a dark shirt, sleeves rolled to his forearms. The moment he looked up at me, the only thought in my head was, how is it possible for someone to be this good-looking? And then he'd said those words, and I thought I must have misheard. So, why did you marry me? I asked. He was quiet for a moment. My mother has been pressuring me to marry. She wanted me to form a marriage alliance with the Tang family's daughter. The Tangs have several projects with the Lu Group, but I looked into them. Their books don't add up. I didn't want to get involved. I needed a wife, someone with no background the Tangs could dig up, and someone my mother couldn't find fault with. He paused, his gaze settling on me. You appeared at just the right moment. Clean background, no business entanglements with me. I thought it would be the simplest solution. And now, I asked. He looked at me and didn't answer. The car fell silent for a few seconds, then he reached out and gently brushed a strand of hair from my ear, his voice carrying a softness I almost missed. Now, it's not so simple anymore. My heart skipped a beat. He pulled his hand back, his tone returning to normal. Tomorrow, Chen Mo will have the evidence on Ju Yutong and her brother organized. How do you want to handle it? I looked down at the bag strap twisted in my lap, thinking for a long time. I want to talk to her once. After all, she was my friend for 5 years. He didn't object, he just said, then I'll go with you. I shook my head. I'll go alone. If you're there, she won't say anything. He studied me for a few seconds, then nodded. Fine, but if you can't handle it, call me. I hummed in acknowledgement and pushed the door open. As I stepped out, I heard the window roll down behind me. He called out, Lin Xiaoman. I turned. He was sitting in the car, the streetlight casting light from the side, his silhouette softer than usual in the night. No matter how it goes, I'm here. I stood there, looking at him. That one sentence felt more reassuring than any promise. I smiled at him. Got it, Mr. Liu. The corner of his mouth lifted, he rolled up the window, and the car pulled away slowly. I stood under the streetlight, watching the taillights disappear into the night. The tangled knot of emotions inside me suddenly felt like it had found a thread to pull. The next afternoon, I arranged to meet Ju Yutong at the coffee shop downstairs from my office. I arrived early and ordered 2 iced coconut lattes, her old favorite, and waited by the window. She showed up 20 minutes late. The moment she pushed through the door and spotted me, her steps faltered, but she still walked over. She sat down, looked at the coffee on the table, and smiled. You still remember what I like to drink? Yeah, I said, looking at her. It's been 5 years. There's a lot I remember. She picked up the cup and took a sip, saying nothing. I didn't rush to speak either. We sat there in silence for a while, the afternoon sun streaming through the glass and stretching the shadow of the coffee cup long across the table. Yutong, I began, my voice calmer than I expected. You set up that blind date for me because you knew it was a trap. The room you sent me to was 1806, and the person waiting there was someone you arranged. You wanted me to sign an intent agreement for you, didn't you? Her hand froze around the cup, knuckles going pale. After a long moment, she set it down and looked up at me, no surprise in her eyes. No guilt, just a quiet resignation, like she'd known this day would come. How did you find out? Lu Tingxiao looked into it. I said, not hiding anything. He found your connection to your brother Ju Kai, your dealings with that company, and the contents of that agreement, a financing contract for a shell company. If I'd signed it, I'd have been the one carrying your debt. Finally, Ju Yutong's composure cracked. She stared at me, lips parting as if to speak, then swallowed the words. What would have happened if I'd signed it? I pressed. Would the debt have fallen on me? Would that money legally be mine? She dropped her gaze, voice barely above a whisper. Neither. The company belongs to my brother. The agreement was just to fool a middleman. Once someone signed, he'd release the funds, and my brother would use the money to cover his losses. You wouldn't have actually owed anything. You'd just have been dragged into a contractual dispute. I stared at her, a heavy ache settling in my chest. So you knew it would drag me in, and you still sent me. Ju Yutong was silent for a long time, long enough that I thought she might never speak again. Then she lifted her head, eyes rimmed with red. Xiaoman, my brother owed 3 million in gambling debts. When those people came knocking, I had nothing to give them. That middleman was my brother's creditor. He said if someone signed the agreement, he'd give us 3 more months. I didn't want you to know any of this. I thought, once you signed, I'd find a way to pull you out. Her voice turned hoarse. I never expected you to walk into the wrong room, and I never expected you to meet Lu Tingxiao. When you told me you'd gotten married that day, my first reaction was relief because you hadn't signed the agreement. But then, I saw the car in your moments, saw you move into his place, and I couldn't stand it. I told my brother, why does she get so lucky? She stumbles into marrying a rich man by accident, while I've been carrying all this debt for him and getting nothing in return. So you spread rumors, I said, that I was climbing the social ladder, that I used a man to get ahead. She didn't deny it, just took another sip of coffee. Yes, I couldn't accept it. I looked at her, emotions churning inside me, anger, disappointment, grief, but in the end, they all settled into exhaustion. I leaned back in my chair and met her eyes. Yutong, your brother's gambling debt was never your fault, but using me to fill that hole, that was your choice. Spreading those rumors, also your choice. You asked why I'm so lucky. Let me tell you, I'm lucky because I met Lu Tingxiao in That room, and he didn't use me, he didn't scheme against me. When he asked if I wanted to marry him, I asked, aren't you afraid I'm after your money? And he said, if you were after money, that'd be easier. I'm more afraid you want nothing at all. Yutong, you've known me for 5 years. You should know I'm not the kind of person who trades her friends for a benefit. She lowered her head and said nothing for a long time. Outside the window, the sunlight drifted westward, and the ice in her coffee had mostly melted. Finally, she looked up, her voice very soft. Xiaoman, I'm sorry, I didn't answer. I stood, picked up my bag, and gave her one last look. The agreement, Lu Tingxiao already handled it. Your brother's creditor won't come after you anymore, but from now on, let's not see each other again. Her lips parted as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, she only nodded. I turned and walked out of the cafe. The moment I pushed through the door, the afternoon breeze hit my face, carrying the first chill of early autumn. I stood there, took a deep breath, and felt the stone that had been pressing on my chest for so long finally lift. That evening, back at the penthouse, Lu Tingxiao was waiting for me on the living room sofa, a file sitting on the coffee table. He gestured to it as I walked in. Ju Kai's situation is handled. The middleman was running an illegal lending operation. He's been investigated, and Ju Kai's debts are tangled up in it. He won't dare bother Ju Yutong for a while. I hummed an acknowledgement and sat down beside him, looking at the file without opening it. I talked to her. Everything's clear now. We won't be in contact anymore. He turned to look at me, a hint of concern in his eyes. Are you okay? I thought about it. Not really good, but not really bad either. It's just 5 years of friendship, ending like this. It feels a little wasteful. He didn't offer empty comfort, didn't say don't be sad. He just sat quietly for a moment, then said, come back to the family estate with me tomorrow. My mother wants to see you again. I blinked. Auntie, didn't we already meet last time? Last time, she was evaluating you. He said evenly, this time is different. This time, I told her I intend to pursue this seriously with you. She needs to make an official statement. My heart suddenly raced. You told your mother? I did. He turned to face me, his gaze earnest. Lin Xiaoman, I married you to appease my mother and the Tang family, but after all this time together, I've realized I don't want to just go through the motions anymore. He paused, his voice dropping. I want to be serious about this. Would you be willing? I sat on the sofa, looking at him. His eyes were bright under the light, like stars had fallen into them. I suddenly remembered the moment I walked into the wrong room and he looked up at me. Remembered the expression on his face when he said wrong seat, right fate. Remembered all the quiet ways he'd protected and trusted me over these weeks. I realized the answer in my heart had been clear all along. I nodded, my voice a little hoarse. Yes. He looked at me, and a slow smile curved at the corner of his mouth, faint, but more stirring than any grand gesture. He reached out and gently took my hand, his palm warm as he wrapped it around mine. Then tomorrow, you're coming home with me. The next morning, Lu Tingxiao drove me to the Lu family estate. The car passed down a street shaded by plane trees and stopped before an iron gate. The courtyard was filled with osmanthus trees, golden blossoms heavy on the branches, their fragrance drifting faintly into the car. He got out, walked around to open my door, and I took a deep breath before following him inside. Mrs. Lu sat on the living room sofa in a plain-colored qipao, her hair neatly pinned, a gentle smile on her face. When she saw me, she set down her teacup, let her gaze rest on me for a moment, then said, Xiaoman, come sit. I walked over and sat across from her. She studied me for a while, her tone carrying a matriarch's warmth. Last time we met, I hadn't fully accepted you. Your background is ordinary, your job is ordinary. I worried you weren't good enough for Tingxiao. My palms were sweating, but I didn't look away. Mrs. Lu continued, but Tingxiao told me something. He said that when he proposed, the first question you asked was, aren't you afraid I'm after your money? He said in over 30 years of life, among all the women he'd been set up with, you were the only one who ever asked that. She paused, her voice softening. I had Chen Mo look into your background afterward. You went on that blind date for Ju Yutong, walked into the wrong room, met Tingxiao, and agreed to his quick marriage, from start to finish. You never asked about his wealth, never made any demands. You treated him sincerely, as just an ordinary person. I hadn't expected her to know all that. I froze, opened my mouth, and found myself at a loss for words. Mrs. Lu smiled and picked up a velvet box from beside her, holding it out to me. This bracelet has been passed down through the Lu family. Tingxiao's grandmother gave it to me, and now I'm giving it to you. I stared at the box, my heart pounding, not reaching for it right away. Mrs. Lu looked at me, her gaze warm and steady. Take it, you deserve it. I reached out, took the box, and opened it. Inside lay a smooth jade bracelet, glowing softly. In the light, I looked up at Lu Tingxiao. He stood nearby, his eyes on me, a slight curve at the corner of his mouth. The tension in my chest dissolved. I looked down at the bracelet and said softly, "Thank you, Auntie, Mrs." Lu smiled, still calling me Auntie. My face flushed. I opened my mouth, hesitated, and finally whispered, "Mom." She responded with a pleased hum, her smile deepening. Lu Tingxiao walked over, sat down beside me, took my hand, and murmured near my ear, "That sounded nice. Say it again." I shot him a glare, my ears burning red. As we left the estate, Mrs. Lu stood at the door seeing us off, the scent of Osman thus trailing all the way down the path. In the passenger seat, I looked down at the warm jade bracelet on my wrist, feeling a quiet sense of groundedness I couldn't quite put into words. Lu Tingxiao drove, glancing at me from the corner of his eye. "What are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking." I paused. Everything feels so unreal. A month ago, I was just an ordinary employee going on a blind date for her best friend. Now I'm sitting in your passenger seat, wearing the Lu family heirloom. He smiled. "So, do you think you got the short end of the deal?" "No." I looked at the outline of his profile and said seriously, "I think I got a pretty good deal." He didn't say anything, but his hand tightened slightly on the steering wheel, and the curve at the corner of his mouth couldn't be hidden. The days passed. The Lu Group's project moved forward smoothly. Ju Kai, caught up in the illegal lending investigation, never bothered Ju Yutong again. The day after our conversation, she packed up and went back to her hometown, sending me a long WeChat message. I read it for a long time, but in the end, I didn't reply. I just deleted it. Those 5 years between us ended with a period. It would be a lie to say I wasn't sad, but I knew some roads simply reach their end, and all you can do is turn your own corner. The rumors at work gradually died down, thanks to Sister Zhao's support and one public appearance by Lu Tingxiao. The gossipy looks shifted from she slept her way up to she's just lucky. I went to work as usual, wrote my proposals as usual, except now, a black sedan often waited outside the office building at the end of the day, its window rolling down to reveal Lu Tingxiao's face. My colleagues went from gasping to taking it in stride, and some even teased me. "Lin Xiaoman, that quick marriage of yours was a hell of a bargain." I smiled and didn't argue. Whether it was worth it, I knew better than anyone. One weekend in late autumn, Lu Tingxiao took me to a hot spring resort in the suburbs. In the evening, we sat on the terrace, facing a hillside of layered autumn colors, the sky burning with orange-red sunset clouds. I wrapped a shawl around myself, leaned against his shoulder, and held a cup of hot tea, thinking that this was what life should feel like, quiet and still. He spoke suddenly. "Xiaoman, do you remember the day we first met?" I hummed. "I do. I walked into the wrong room, and you were sitting on the sofa. You looked up at me and said, 'Wrong seat, right fate, want to get married.' I thought you were insane." He let out a low laugh. I thought I was insane too, but looking back, it might be the best decision I've ever made. I looked up at him. The light of the sunset fell across his face, softening every line of his features. He looked down at me, his gaze serious. "I married you back then to deal with my mother and the Tang family, but now, I want to marry you again, not for any reason, but simply because you're Lin Xiaoman." I looked at him, and my nose suddenly stung. I buried my face in the crook of his shoulder, my voice muffled. "Lu Tingxiao, how is it that even your love confessions sound so ridiculously proper?" He wrapped his arms around me, resting his chin on top of my head, his voice carrying a smile. "So, will you marry me?" I lifted my head, looked at him, my eyes burning a little, but the corners of my mouth couldn't be held down. "Yes." He lowered his head and pressed a very gentle kiss to my forehead. The mountain breeze swept past, and in the distance came the misty steam of the hot springs. The sunset glow on the horizon slowly sank, and stars began to light up one by one. I leaned against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, and suddenly felt that every twist and turn in my life had been leading me to this very moment. Later, at the Lu Group annual gala, Lu Tingxiao introduced me to everyone for the first time as his wife. He stood on stage, holding my hand, his voice neither too loud nor too soft, yet it silenced the entire ballroom. "This is my wife, Lin Xiaoman. On the very first day we met, she walked into the wrong room, but I'm grateful she did." A wave of warm laughter and applause rippled through the audience. I stood beside him, looking at the outline of his profile, and thought to myself, this man is the most beautiful accident of my life. That night when we got home, I curled up on the sofa scrolling through my phone when I suddenly saw a new post on Ju Yutong's Moments, a photo of her hometown, captioned "A fresh start." I stared at it for a long time, then finally swiped past it. No like, no comment. Some people and some things are like autumn leaves, once they fall. The page turns. Lu Tingxiao walked over with a glass of warm milk, sat down beside me, and handed it to me. What are you looking at? Nothing. I took the milk, sipped it, then looked up at him. Mr. Lu, do you think we'll always be like this? He glanced at me, his voice calm but certain. Yes, so sure, He reached out and tucked a strand of loose hair behind my ear, his fingertips warm, because in this lifetime, I've only ever been serious once. I set the milk down, leaned over, and kissed his cheek. He froze for a moment, then the corner of his mouth curved up, his eyes holding a hint of helpless amusement. Lin Xiaoman, you're less like that girl who walked into the wrong room. Then what am I like? He thought for a moment, his voice dropping low, like, my wife. Outside the window, the night was gentle, and the city lights flowed in the distance. I leaned against his shoulder, listening to his steady breathing, and felt that the lamp in my heart had finally found its home. When I woke up, Lu Tingxiao was already out of bed. On the pillow beside me sat a glass of warm water and a sticky note with his usual clean, crisp handwriting. Breakfast is on the table. The driver arrives at 8:30. Dinner together tonight. I grabbed my phone to check the time. It was already 7:40. I shot up from the bed like a spring, scrambling to wash up and change. Even though I'd been living in this penthouse for half a month now, I still hadn't fully gotten used to this CEO-style schedule. By the time I rushed downstairs, Lu Tingxiao was sitting at the dining table looking at his tablet, a bowl of congee and a plate of side dishes in front of him. He heard my footsteps, looked up, and his gaze lingered on me for a moment. You look good in that. I glanced down at the white shirt and jeans I'd grabbed at random, feeling a bit embarrassed. It's just my regular work clothes. Regular clothes look good on you too. He said it in that same unflappable tone, like he was reading a weather forecast, but my ears still burned. I sat down to eat my congee, and he set down his tablet, looking at me. Anything going on this afternoon? I have a planning meeting, should be done by 5. I'll pick you up at 5:30. Where are we going? He paused. You'll find out when we get there. I looked up at him, meeting his calm gaze, and the curiosity bubbling inside me got swallowed by that expression of his that said nothing worth asking about. Over the past half month, I'd figured out one thing about Lu Tingxiao. If he wants you to know something, you don't need to ask. If he doesn't want you to know, you can ask all you want and he'll just change the subject. I lowered my head and kept eating my congee, swallowing my question. During the morning meeting at the office, Sister Zhao sat next to me and nudged me with her elbow. Did you hear? Zhu Yutong resigned. The pen in my hand paused. When did that happen? Just last week. HR said she submitted it voluntarily, finished her handover, and left. Didn't even say goodbye. Sister Zhao lowered her voice. Before she left, she said something about you in the group chat. You didn't see it. I really hadn't seen it. After our confrontation at the cafe, I hadn't deleted Zhu Yutong from WeChat, but I'd turned off notifications for her messages long ago. During that period, she'd sent a bunch of messages, sometimes cursing me for climbing the social ladder and turning my back on old friends, sometimes sending Xiaoman, I know I was wrong, please forgive me, all over the place, like she'd been drinking. I didn't reply to a single one, and eventually, she went quiet. I never expected her to just quit outright. Do you think it's because of that incident? Sister Zhao probed. I don't know. I twirled the pen in my hand. Whatever choice she makes is her own business. I can't control that. Sister Zhao looked at me, didn't press further, and patted my shoulder. Alright, as long as you know what you're doing. The afternoon planning meeting went smoother than expected. The proposal passed on the first try, and I was in a pretty good mood when I walked out of the conference room. I was just packing up to leave when my phone buzzed. It was a WeChat message from Lu Tingxiao. I'm here. Downstairs, I quickly stuffed my laptop into my bag, waved at Sister Zhao, and headed out. When I reached the elevator, my phone buzzed again. Still Lu Tingxiao. No rush, I'll wait. I smiled, tucked my phone back into my pocket, and pressed the elevator button. The black sedan was parked downstairs, window half down. Lu Tingxiao sat in the driver's seat, one hand resting on the steering wheel, the other holding his phone, seemingly replying to a message. I walked over, opened the passenger door, and as soon as I sat down, a familiar scent washed over me, that crisp cedar fragrance he always carried. Why are you so early today? I buckled my seatbelt and turned to look at him. He put away his phone and started the engine. Taking you somewhere. The car pulled out of the office district and merged into the evening rush hour traffic. I leaned back in my seat, watching the street scenes flash by the window, and didn't ask where we were going. There was no point anyway, I wouldn't get an answer. But when the car turned onto a street that was becoming increasingly familiar, I suddenly froze and sat up straight. This is the road to my parents' place, He turned the wheel, and the car came to a smooth stop in front of an old residential building. Your mom called last week saying you hadn't been back in a long time. I happened to be free today, so I thought I'd come with you. To visit. I was stunned, staring at him. When did you even get in touch with my mom? The day you moved into my place. He turned off the engine and looked at me. You were upstairs unpacking, and your mom called to ask where you were staying. I answered, I didn't know what to say for a moment. Why didn't you tell me? You just moved in, and your emotions were still unsettled. I was afraid you'd think I was overstepping. He said it matter-of-factly, his tone flat. Now that you've settled in, it's time to go see them. I looked at him, and something in my chest seemed to be gently plucked, a mix of ache and warmth. I opened my mouth, wanting to say something, but didn't know where to start. Finally, I managed just 2 words. Thank you. He glanced at me, the corner of his mouth curving slightly. Let's go, don't keep your parents waiting. I pushed open the car door and stepped out, then looked back at him. He locked the car, walked over to me, and naturally reached out to take my hand, his palm dry and warm. I glanced down at his fingers wrapped around mine, and the nervousness and unease in my chest suddenly dissolved. Walking up the stairs, my heart was beating a little fast. It had been half a month since I'd been back, and I had no idea what my parents' attitude would be. Last time I mentioned the quick marriage, my mom had been silent on the phone for a long time before finally saying, "Just make sure you've thought it through," her voice full of worry. I knew they didn't oppose my marriage, but a son-in-law who appeared out of nowhere, any parent would need time to process that. The doorbell rang once, and the door opened quickly. My mom stood at the entrance, and when she saw me, her eyes visibly reddened, but her words were the same as always, "You're back. You've gotten thinner." Then her gaze landed on Lu Tingxiao behind me, and her expression paused. Lu Tingxiao stood behind me, giving a slight bow. "Hello, Auntie, I'm Lu Tingxiao." My mom looked at him for a long while, her eyes sweeping over him from head to toe, before finally stepping aside. "Come in." In the living room, my dad was sitting on the sofa watching TV. When he saw us come in, he turned the volume down a notch and gave Lu Tingxiao a nod, but didn't say anything. I sat down on the sofa, feeling a subtle tension hanging in the air. My mom brought over 2 glasses of water, set them on the coffee table, glanced at Lu Tingxiao, then at me. "You too, have a seat, I'll go make dinner." She started toward the kitchen, then stopped and turned back. "Xiaoman, come help." I glanced at Lu Tingxiao, and he gave me a slight nod. I got up and followed my mom into the kitchen, closing the door behind me. She had her back to me, washing vegetables at the sink, her voice low. "Tell me the truth, is he good to you?" "Yes." I leaned against the counter, speaking earnestly. "He really is good to me." "And what about his family? Has his mother met you?" "She has. She even gave me a bracelet, said it's been passed down in the family." I rolled up my sleeve, revealing the warm jade bangle on my wrist. My mom glanced down at it, was silent for a moment, then let out a soft sigh. "I can tell he's not the kind of person who does things carelessly, but you two have only known each other for, what, a month, and you're already married. I just can't quite settle my heart." "Mom, I know you worry about me." I walked over and wrapped my arms around her shoulders from behind. "But I've really thought this through." Lu Tingxiao, sure. Sometimes he's got a cold face and doesn't say much, but everything he does seriously. Today he brought me to see you guys without even telling me beforehand. Now, would someone who doesn't care about you do something like that? My mom didn't say anything for a while. Finally, she reached up and patted the back of my hand. "All right, as long as you're happy, that's what matters. Mom just doesn't want you to get hurt." "You won't." I smiled. "He wouldn't let me get hurt." Dinner passed in a subtly charged atmosphere. My dad didn't say much, but he served Lu Tingxiao several dishes, and Lu Tingxiao ate every bite, even complimenting. "Dad's cooking is excellent." My dad froze for a second, the corner of his mouth twitching, not saying a word, but there was clearly a hint of warmth in his eyes. When we were leaving, my mom walked us to the door, holding my hand, her voice a little choked. "Come back often when you have time." I nodded. Lu Tingxiao stood behind me and said softly, "Mom, we'll come back often." My mom froze, her eyes reddening, but the corners of her mouth curved upward. Good, good." On the way back, the car was quiet. Streetlight after streetlight swept across the window in segments. I leaned back in my seat, turned my head to look at him. "Lu Tingxiao, how did you know my parents would accept you?" He paused for a moment, his voice calm. "Because I was serious. I watched the outline of his profile and suddenly realized this man was far more perceptive than I'd given him credit for. I turned my head toward the window, feeling the corners of my mouth lift on their own. When we got home, I curled up on the couch and scrolled through my phone. A gossip message popped up in the department group chat. I tapped it open. It was a screenshot. Ju Yutong had posted a status. Some people fly up the branch and forget who they are. No names mentioned, but a mutual friend had commented with a hug emoji. I didn't open the comments. I flipped the phone over and set it face down on the coffee table, letting out a slow breath. It would be a lie to say it didn't sting, but I also knew that once something was over, there was no point looking back. Lu Tingxiao walked out of the study, a file in hand. He paused when he saw me sitting on the couch, staring into space. What's wrong? Nothing. I picked up my phone and gave it a little shake. Just saw something that didn't sit well with me. He came over and sat down beside me. His eyes fixed on my face. Ju Yutong. I nodded. No point hiding it. He held my gaze, his voice flat. She came to see me before she resigned last week. My head snapped toward him. She came to see you. He leaned back against the couch. She said there were some misunderstandings between you two, and she hoped I wouldn't just take your word for it. She also gave me something. What? A copy of an agreement, the one Ju Kai and she signed with the Tang family about an information exchange clause involving a Lu group project. He paused. There was a provision that once things went through, Ju Yutong would receive a cut from the Tang family. I froze, and it took me a long moment to find my voice. She gave that to you herself? Yes. He looked at me, his gaze steady and serious. She said she didn't want to be part of that anymore, but she was afraid you'd think she was still tangled up with the Tang family, so she handed it to me and asked me to pass it along to you. I sat there on the couch, unable to speak for a long time. A tangled knot of emotions churned inside me. I knew Ju Yutong too well. She always put herself first, but she never made a move without a safety net. Giving that document to Lu Tingxiao was her way of burning the bridge behind her, cutting herself off from the Tang family completely. Did she say anything else? She said she owed you a formal apology, but she didn't have the face to say it to you directly, so she asked me to pass it on. I lowered my eyes, looking at the jade bracelet on my wrist, and stayed silent for a long while. The streetlight outside spilled through the window, painting a soft white glow across the floor. Lu Tingxiao, I said quietly, do you think the bond between people can really just snap, just like that? He didn't answer right away. After a moment, he reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, his voice low and gentle. Some bonds break to make room for the right person. I turned to look at him, my eyes stinging. He sat there, backlit by the light, his features far softer than the first time I'd seen him. I suddenly remembered that afternoon, him sitting on the couch in the hotel suite, glancing up at me and saying, "Wrong seat, right fate, want to get married." Back then, I thought he was insane. Now I realized he'd simply seen the answer before anyone else. I leaned into him, burying my face in the hollow of his shoulder, my voice muffled. Lu Tingxiao, thank you. He wrapped his arms around me, his chin resting on top of my head, a hint of a smile in his voice. For what? For clearing the path, so I could walk to your side. He didn't say anything, but his arms tightened around me. Outside, the night was still, and the city lights flowed in the distance like scattered gold. I leaned against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, and felt that all the people and things I'd turned the page on had finally become the past, and the man in front of me was the future I'd walk toward. The days that followed flowed like a calm river. I went to work as usual, occasionally stayed late. Lu Tingxiao picked me up sometimes, and sometimes he didn't, but no matter how late it was, he always left a light on in the living room. I slowly got used to the rhythm, the breakfast he always had ready in the fridge, the weekends he dragged me to the supermarket, him pushing the cart while I picked out snacks, bickering over which flavor of chips to get before he always gave in. In mid-November, the Lu Group had a major project launch event, and Lu Tingxiao, as CEO, was set to speak on stage. He mentioned it a week in advance, saying he hoped I'd attend. I hesitated. Is it appropriate for me to go? You're Mrs. Lu. Why wouldn't it be? But I scratched my head. What am I supposed to wear? He glanced at me. I'll have Chen Mo arrange it. So the day before the launch, Chen Mo delivered a box. Inside was a champagne-colored dress, clean, simple tailoring, with a thin line of delicate crystals along the neckline that caught the light with a subtle gleam. I tried it on and stood in front of the mirror for a long time, uncertain. Lu Tingxiao walked out of the study, leaned against the doorframe, and his gaze lingered. Does it look good? I tugged at the hem, a little nervous. He walked over and stood behind me, looking at the two of us side by side in the mirror, his voice dropping. Good, are you being honest, or just polite? I'm never polite. With you. He reached out and tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear, his fingertips warm. Wear this tomorrow. On the day of the launch, I sat in the front row of the guest section, watching Lu Tingxiao on stage in a dark grey suit, his posture tall and composed, his voice low and steady as he laid out the project plan. The room was packed with media and partners, cameras flashing in waves. Between segments of his speech, his gaze would occasionally sweep across the audience, and when it landed on me, it would pause for just a beat, the corner of his mouth curving almost imperceptibly. After the event, Chen Mo led me to the backstage lounge to find him. He was standing by the window on a call. He turned at the sound of footsteps, hung up, and walked over. Been waiting long? No, I shook my head. You spoke really well, he smiled, about to say something. When his phone buzzed again, he glanced at the screen, his brow furrowing slightly. He picked up, his tone cold. What is it? Whatever was said on the other end made him go quiet for a moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was even colder. If she comes again, stop her downstairs. Don't bother announcing her. He hung up and looked at me, his expression returning to its usual calm. The Tang family sent someone again, trying to set up a private meeting. I turned them down. I blinked. The Tang family is still coming after you. He walked over and smoothed the hair on my shoulder, his tone light. After what happened with Tang Yao, the Tang family lost face. They've been looking for a way to save it. Recently they sent someone over, claiming they wanted to discuss a partnership, but really they're using Ju Kai's old debts to pressure me into giving ground on a project. So what's your plan? Not giving an inch. He said it without hesitation. They have Ju Kai's old accounts, but Ju Kai has already burned that bridge with them. The evidence chain is incomplete. If they want to make a scene, they're not clean themselves. I had Chen Mo look into the cash flow of their recent projects. There are a few holes. They wouldn't dare push me into a real confrontation. I looked at him, a strange feeling rising in my chest. This man stood in front of me, shielding me from every storm, telling me lightly, don't worry. But I knew how long he'd carried everything alone to get where he was today. Lu Tingxiao, I said, from now on, if something happens, you can tell me too. I looked at him seriously. I might not be able to help, but at least, I can carry it with you. He held my gaze, pausing for a moment, then the corner of his mouth curved up, and he reached out to ruffle my hair. Got it, Mrs. Lu. That night, when we got home, I curled up on the couch scrolling through my phone when a news alert popped up. The headline read, Lu Group and Tang family business dispute escalates, allegations of unfair competition. Below it was a photo of the Tang family villa. I tapped it open. The article was vague, but the subtext kept hinting that the Lu Group had engaged in shady practices. I frowned and turned to Lu Tingxiao, who was sitting beside me reviewing documents. Have you seen this news? He didn't look up. Seen it. You're not going to do anything about it. No need. He flipped a page. A piece this small will sink on its own by tomorrow. The Tang family likes these little games. The more attention you give them, the more they play up. I watched him for a moment. He sat there, completely unbothered, as if the whole thing didn't touch him. I set my phone down and leaned over, resting my chin on his shoulder. Then is there anything you're actually worried about? His hand paused on the page. He was silent for a few seconds. Then his voice dropped. Yes, what? He put the file down and turned to look at me, his eyes deep under the light. That one day you'll think it through, decide marrying me was a bad deal, and run. I blinked, then couldn't help but laugh out loud. Lu Tingxiao, you're a CEO worth billions. How are you afraid of that? Money is money. He reached out and pulled me into his arms, his chin resting on my head, his voice muffled. You're you. I leaned against his chest, listening to his steady heartbeat, warmth spreading through me like water. I tilted my head up and kissed his jaw. Then let me tell you, I'm not running, not in this lifetime. He looked down at me, a hint of a smile in his eyes, and gave a low hum of acknowledgement. Moonlight streamed through the window, stretching our shadows long across the floor. The light inside me burned steady and bright. Around that time, the Lu Group's stock did fluctuate for a bit, but it stabilized within days. Lu Tingxiao was right. The Tang family's little moves were like stones dropped into deep water, a few ripples and then nothing. As for Ju Yutong, she posted another cryptic status. Some people drift apart as they walk. I hope you do well, but I won't be wishing you well. I didn't reply, didn't delete it either. I just let it sit there, like an old chat log that had passed its expiration date. In early December, Mrs. Lu invited me to lunch, just the two of us. She chose an old, well-known Cantonese restaurant. In the private room, it was only us, with 4 dishes on the table, all home-style: steamed sea bass, blanched choy sum, a slow-cooked soup, and a plate of Osmanthus cake. Not a hint of high society extravagance. She picked up a piece of fish and placed it in my bowl, her tone casual. "Xiaoman, how's work been lately?" "Pretty good, just wrapped up a project, so it'll be lighter toward the end of the year." "Ting Xiao told me you sat in the front row at the launch event. The media got quite a few photos of you." She took a sip of soup, unhurried. "A few old friends called to ask me," said the young Mrs. "Lu looks quite youthful. Which family's daughter is she?" My hand tightened on my chopsticks. She glanced at me and smiled. I told them, "She's not some young miss, she's my daughter-in-law, ordinary family, but a solid person." My nose stung. I lowered my head and took a bite of rice. "Mom, thank you." "For what?" She set down her spoon and looked at me seriously. "I did worry at first. I was afraid you were with Ting Xiao for the money, but later, I saw it clearly. When Ting Xiao is with you, he's completely relaxed. He used to come home with that stiff face, barely saying a word at the dinner table. Now, on weekends, he actually asks me if I want to have a meal together. Says you taught him that." I smiled, but didn't say anything. "Xiaoman, let me be honest with you." She reached over and patted the back of my hand. "I've seen too many people in my lifetime. I can tell who's genuine and who's fake at a single glance. What you feel for Ting Xiao is real, and that's all that matters. From now on, whether it's the Tang family or the Zhu family, if anyone gives you trouble, you come to me. I'll have your back." My eyes stung with warmth, and I nodded. "Okay." When I got home that day, I told Lu Ting Xiao all about it. He was sitting on the couch reading through some documents, and when he finished listening, he looked up, the corner of his mouth curving slightly. "My mom's officially been won over by you." "Won over? It's called approval." I sat down beside him, leaning my head against his shoulder. "Your mom even said she'd have my back." "And what about me?" He turned his head to look at me, a hint of amusement in his voice. "You don't need me to have your back. You're different." I tilted my head up to meet his eyes. "You're the one I'm going to grow old with." He looked at me, his gaze softening slowly, then pulled me into his arms, his voice low. "Yeah, growing old together." At the end of December, the Lu group held its annual gala, and Lu Ting Xiao, for the first time ever, brought me along and even had me go up on stage to draw the lucky draw. I stood up there in the champagne-colored gown he'd picked out for me, holding the raffle box in my hands, with hundreds of eyes on me from the audience. My palms were sweating from nerves. He was seated at the front table, a glass of red wine in his hand, his gaze fixed on me the entire time, a slight curve at the corner of his mouth, like he was watching a show he was thoroughly enjoying. I drew the grand prize, a trip for 2 to Europe. Standing on stage, holding the plane tickets, I froze for a second. The host smiled and asked me, "Mrs. Lu, who are you planning to go with?" A wave of good-natured laughter rippled through the crowd. I looked at Lu Ting Xiao. He raised his glass slightly in my direction, a mischievous glint in his eyes. I cleared my throat and spoke into the microphone. "With my husband." Applause and whistles mixed together as I walked off the stage, cheeks flushed, and sat down beside him. I lowered my voice. "You planned that, didn't you?" "No." He took a slow sip of his wine. "But I think it worked out well. I'll have some free time around the holidays. Good chance to take you out for a trip. What about your company? Isn't it busy?" "It is." He set down his glass and turned to look at me, his gaze tender. "But taking care of my wife matters more." After the gala ended, we drove home. The city streets were quiet and empty late at night, streetlights casting warm amber streaks across the car windows. He was driving, and I sat in the passenger seat, my head resting against the glass, watching the night view outside. Suddenly, I thought back to that afternoon months ago when I went to a blind date for my best friend, walked into the wrong room, pushed open that door, and saw him sitting by the window, lifting his head to say to me, "Wrong room is fate, want to get married." Back then, I thought I'd misheard. I thought it was a joke. I thought this marriage wouldn't survive 3 months, but before I knew it, we'd already walked such a long road together, from strangers to familiar, from a contract to genuine feeling, from doubt to unshakable certainty. "Lu Ting Xiao," I said softly, that thing you said back then, wrong room is fate, did you really mean it?" He was quiet for a moment. The car stopped at a red light, and he turned his head to look at me, his gaze especially deep in the darkness. I thought, a girl who could walk into my room by mistake, she must have been arranged by fate. And what if it hadn't been me that day? There wouldn't have been anyone else. He said it with absolute certainty. That room. Only you ever walked into it by mistake. The light turned green, he pressed the gas, and the car glided back into the night. I watched his profile, and the warmth in my chest stretched on like the streetlights outside, endless. With no end in sight, I reached out and took his hand where it rested on the steering wheel. He turned his hand over and laced his fingers through mine, his palm warm. I knew this was my ending, not some breathtaking moment, not some spotlighted high point blessed by everyone, but nights like these, ordinary and quiet. He drives, I sit beside him, we talk about this and that, and then we go home together. The light at home is always on.